Welcome to the Swords and Sports Podcast, one man's journey to read 52 fantasy books in 52 weeks and create 52 podcasts documenting the experience. I'm your host, and this week I am joined on this stop on this 52 book, 52 week journey by the legendary man himself, Dyrk Ashton, author of Smithbow 3 finalist Paternus. The interview is coming up as usual after the book details, so just listen to me drone on for 2 to 3 minutes and then we get right into the interview. As a quick promo, please download this podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Those include Spotify, iTunes, and I've been putting out videos lately. Check it out on YouTube. If you want to know how do I find this stuff, you can always look it up on Swords and Sports, or you can follow me on all my various social media platforms. I'm super enthusiastic about this today. It seems like it's coming off as super awkward in this video because I hate doing videos. But you know what? It's for the people. Those social media platforms are all with the handle @Swords and Sports, and they include Instagram, where I've been posting clips of some of the best stuff from these interviews, and Twitter, where all the news about such as what authors are coming on, what books are being featured, and all that good stuff lives on the Twitter feed. Let's get right into these book details because I am hyped. The book is Paternus, Rise of the Gods. The author is Dirk Ashton. The series is the Paternus trilogy. It was published on May 1st, 2016. It is 457 pages in the paperback edition. The publisher is Paternus Books Media. Yes, it is a self-pub superstar book. And the books in the series are Paternus, Wrath of Gods, War of Gods. And this book was nominated for a Smithbow Award for Best Fantasy Book in 2016. Right before the interview, I just want to give a spoiler warning. So this is it. This podcast interview contains spoilers for mostly Paternus, a little bit of Wrath of Gods, and a little bit of War of Gods, though I think those spoilers were approved by Dirk himself because he provided them. So without further ado, and man, I was super excited to interview Dirk Ashton. All right. We are back with another week of the Swords and Sports Podcast. This time, I'm joined by a man with a million accolades, the author of the award-winning Paternus trilogy, and the guy who played Carriot in the second Jungle Book. I definitely think I butchered that guy's name. It's the one and only Dirk Ashton. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Sadly, Dirk is one of the co-hosts of Wizards, Warriors, and Words, and they did not warn him about coming on this show. So
bastards. They're all, I can't really blame them because they're all just sock puppets of me anyway.
Yeah, I want to get into that. That's the first question. I saw that Michael Fletcher posted about his new copyright notice, and you seem to have made that cut.
Well, of course, I write all his books because he doesn't actually exist.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
So you wrote the intro to this podcast. That's great.
Yeah. Most people don't know that this arm right here is actually off to the side up in a sock recording you.
Oh, that's terrifying. Does your podcast have a stranglehold on the Booknest Self-Pub Awards?
Somehow it seems to, doesn't it? No, I don't know why, but that is crazy, pretty crazy.
You guys
Ben Galley has won Booknest, and he is not involved with Wizards, Warriors, and Worms, but and weirdos. But he is Rob Hayes, so
that's good to know. Also a former guest of this show. So I want to address this right away. One Amazon reviewer commented on your book that present tense equals therefore trash.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
agree with this?
Of course, absolutely. Why not? Because, if that includes, The Handmaid's Tale and The Crucible and Red Rising and Hunger Games and Girl with All the Gifts, I am happy to be called trash.
I mean, that is some elite company of trash.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How much of a book do you need to read before you can review it? Because I think one sentence is just enough.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, if that's all he was looking for or she, I have no idea. It was on Amazon actually, unless they also put it on Goodreads. I haven't looked. But I um uh, I have no idea. Uh they were looking for one thing in particular, and if it's not what they like, then obviously they don't like present tense, and if they see present tense, it's an automatic 1 star and bad review, and they call it trash. So, it's also one of those reviewers that calls themselves avid reader, right?
Right.
So obviously aren't that avid, or they would have read some of those other books that are in present tense that have done very, very well. Um,
Or, read
and
the
it's also not
description.
their real name, so it's a little cowardly, but who am
Well,
I to judge?
it's very easy to hide behind,
Yeah.
just a username, which is why I make sure that I face all the authors before I trash their book. Duncan.
Yeah. Yeah, and I put my name on any review that I post.
Absolutely. You know, towards that avid reader point, I don't think you're an avid reader if you haven't read the description of the book before before you were willing to, because you've read less of the book than the book's description.
Yeah, I don't know how much they read of the they read the sample of the first chapter, I guess, is kind of what they said, but I have no idea. But that kind of stuff, we all get really crappy reviews, and some of them read the whole thing and still hate it. The ones that always amaze me are people that read all three books, even though they don't like the first one or the second one, and they still read the third one and don't like the third one. If I don't like a book, I don't keep reading in a series. That's
I
some
agree
serious,
with that.
that's some real dedication there.
The only time I've ever done that was reading The Dark Tower. I hated all of them, and I kept reading them because I had to believe that if Idris Elba was getting the leading role in the movie, it had to have some redeeming qualities.
Right, right, but never happened.
It just never happened. It's probably the only. It's probably like the only popular fantasy series that I absolutely
Yeah.
hated.
Yeah, well, Stephen King can take it. It's okay.
Yeah, I
He
don't think
he
he's
can take a
ever
little
deserved.
abuse.
I'm sure he can
It's
handle
e-
more
it's
negative.
it's easier when you're counting your millions.
Well, you could throw millions at the problem, right?
Right, yeah, sure.
So you just finished up because this is airing after your Kickstarter ended.
Okay.
So do you want to comment about how that Kickstarter finished up, even though it hasn't technically finished up as of
Yeah,
this moment?
there's 3 more days to go. We just hit $37,000 yesterday afternoon or last evening, and that's the um fourth stretch goal. So I we just had actually we I went in last night real quick late and said this is great. I'll post the next stretch goal tomorrow morning. But we had a big electrical storm and rainstorm last night. So the internet was out all morning, and it just came on just before noon. So I've been playing catch up all day, and I still haven't posted the next stretch goal. It ends Monday night. It will have already ended when you're
By the
watching
time this
this, but
airs,
there's
yeah.
only a few days to go. But I couldn't believe it. I mean, we funded. It was like $17,800 is what we needed for the funding for the hardbacks and the slipcases, and we funded in 3.5 hours, and we're through the first through stretch goals in like a day or two. Um, then it slowed way down.
Right.
But that's the way they always do. And now it's picking back up a little bit at the end. But I'll tell you what, if it would have stopped the second day with the funding of what we had at the end of the second day, I would have been perfectly happy. So all of this is just amazing gravy at this point. So
Right. I
this is,
mean,
yeah, this
that's
is
got
the
to be a
third,
good feeling.
this is the final Kickstarter of the trilogy. I did one for these special limited edition signed and numbered hardbacks. For book one, having no idea how it would do, it did real well. Second one did even better, pulled on a whole bunch of new people. And this third one is just going insane. So yeah,
So
I'm still kind of flabbersmacked.
flabbergasted, I love it. So fuck you to that reviewer. Obviously, people like the book.
Yeah. I've been around and worked in Hollywood for a while, so you got to get a pretty tough skin doing that.
Absolutely. How much of that do you pocket? Is it a big pay? No, I'm
Of the Kickstarters, it's not a large margin. Uh, the first one, in fact, I lost money,
Right.
even though it did real well because it was the first one. I lost money on shipping. I lost money on shipping on the second one. I did better and made a little money on the second one. This one will be quite a bit better. But the margins aren't any better than, you know, selling stuff through a store, actually maybe a little less, because I priced everything lower. The whole idea was to price to buy enough stuff to then sell it at a higher retail price, right, on a store on my site. But everything's sold out in these three Kickstarters pretty much. So I won't have much. I'll have some, but maybe like 20 sets,
So
and
your own
that's it.
popularity
Left.
bit you in the
Yeah,
ass.
but I'm not complaining. It's pretty amazing. But
Yeah.
and the reason this one will do better is that the first two books are already printed, and I'm only printing 500 of each, right?
Right.
Um, and the first two books are already printed, and a lot of people have bought full trilogies in this one, uh, did book one and book two as an add-on because this one was officially for book three, and but those are already paid for with the first two Kickstarters. So that's what you hope for, and that's where I got with it. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Absolutely. And it definitely speaks to the quality of the books. If that by book three, you've got even more support, it means you didn't
Yeah,
screw it up.
it's cool, and a lot of these on the night. One of the great things about the Kickstarters is that I picked up probably 200 new readers, 100 new readers, uh, 70 to 100 in the first one, 200 new readers in the second one, and I picked up 100, 150 new readers in this third one already. So it's
Shit,
pretty cool.
what an unforeseen positive consequence.
Yeah, I did not expect that at all. I was expecting I only had, you know, previous fans to draw from, but that's not the case. Yeah.
On another note, in a 2016 AMA, a former student of yours asked about a 2012 screening of Room 237 in Cleveland. You answered that you must have a doppelganger. Was that the first time that you realized that Michael R. Fletcher might be your doppelganger?
I've had doppels all my life. That guy that gets hit by a truck in Night of the Living Dead 1990, totally not me. That guy who plays Karate, it's pronounced Karate in
Oh,
Jungle
I
Book,
butchered that.
totally not me. So Fletcher and Hayes have been hiding in the background for a long time, going out and doing this weird shit that I have nothing to do with.
Did you ever ask either of them if Room 237 was any good?
Uh, uh, no, because I made it.
Right. Okay. Well, apparently they walked out of it, if I remember from the post correctly.
Yeah, yeah,
So you've kind of had a wild career that
yeah,
has been
crazy.
all over the place. You retired from a tenure track position. That is most people's life goal. And you were
Yeah,
just like, nah.
yeah, nah, yeah. I left that, and that was, you know, I didn't even go back to get my PhD and start doing that in like till like 2001. and got the PhD, and I was already in my late 30s at that point. So I only did that for 9 years before I left to teach all online as an independent adjunct, which is what I've been doing for the last 11 years. So and writing. That's when I
Well, also the right.
finally had time to start writing. If I wouldn't have done that, if I would have stayed, I might be able to retire in 6 to 9 years, depending on how things go these days. Um, they're making people work till they're 70 now.
It's
It's
crazy.
crazy. But if I would have stayed, I never would have written these books. I would never be writing because there was absolutely no time. Anybody who thinks it's a cushy job and you get summers off and sit around smoking pipes it's just, in an academic lounge, it's not. It's a nightmare. It's a lot of work, a lot of politics, a lot of bullshit, to be honest.
Right.
The students and the teaching are fantastic. It's all the other garbage that you have to do that's a bit of a nightmare. So I didn't hate it, but I was like, I just don't want to do this for the next 20 years. So I just decided I had an opportunity at that time to get into online teaching only. And that's what I've been doing for my day job for several different schools.
I mean, that's truly making it work for you, which is awesome. I don't think people realize that the thing with a lot of dream jobs that they don't know much about is that kind of balance of how much of the thing you love about this job outweighs the stuff that sucks about it. Because every job has bad stuff with it.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's stuff about writing that's no fun.
Of course.
Stuff about not stuff about writing so much, but stuff about just the business of self-publishing and just having to do everything. Self-publishing is you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a startup. It's like starting up a business. You have to line up everything that a business would have these days, right? Um, so with you've got to advertise,
Right.
you've got to have a website, you got to have production, you got to produce the books, you've got to do all the things that anybody running a local coffee shop or hardware store would have to do, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's a common misconception. There's like the ideal of, oh, I'm just gonna get to write all day. But it's, outside
Yeah.
of the writing, it's largely a marketing job.
Yeah. It's a little. It used to be much cooler for traditionally published authors if they could get to the point where they could make a living, which most do not. Um,
Right.
and they'll be the first ones to admit that most traditionally published authors still have day jobs, even if they have 3 to 5 or more books out that have done well.
Right.
Uh, and But even once you get to the point where you're just writing, today they expect you to do a lot of your own marketing kind of stuff with social media and things like that weren't expected 20, 25 years ago. All you really needed to do was get the books out there and then make some appearances. But it's gotten harder and more work for even trad pub authors.
Yeah, I don't think most people even realize that trad pub authors, most of them don't even get a publicist if the publishing company doesn't think that the book is viable enough to make back the advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's difficult, but obviously you've navigated it extremely well.
Yeah,
You're
well, I'm on the self pub side,
right.
and that's because I mean I weighed the sides, but I used to write screenplays, and I made my living as an actor. Though I'm a terrible actor when I was in Los Angeles, and I had agents, and I know how film business and film contracts works. I knew how screenwriting contracts and agenting worked. And But mostly what I was doing was producing. So Hollywood studios and production companies, independent production companies, are extremely similar to trad pub authors and their various and sundry emblems that they have underneath. So, I just decided that I just wasn't interested. I talked to a couple of friends who said, yeah, screw it, go ahead and try. I was also right on the cusp because not that long ago, if you had self-published, you could forget ever getting an agent, right? And,
Right.
and you could forget ever getting a trad pub deal. So that's it. You're just done. You're out. But that started changing very quickly. Um, right when I in 2016 was getting into self-publishing. And it didn't hurt that uh, The Martian, and Anthony Ryan's book got picked up. And then, right in the SPFBO, when I was in there in 2016, which is what I credit for all of my success,
Right.
um, uh, getting the publicity and placing in that, um, was, that the winner got a trad pub author actually was not just contacted by an agent, but contacted by a senior editor, who then lined up a bunch of people for him to interview to be his agent. Jonathan French's The Gray Bastards, and
Fantastic book.
yeah, and then also Josiah Bancroft was in that group. He didn't make it as a finalist, but Mark Lawrence recommended him to his agent, and he got an agent. And look, he's you know publishing books, trad pub author. So things have changed a lot. Um, it's I can go to a con and have lunch or chill and hang out with trad pub authors and agents, and they're all cool. There are still some old school pricks, in the editors, at trad pub authors and agents who despise the fact that we didn't go through the jump through the ring of fire and go and make it through the pearly gate. But they're they are fewer and fewer.
Yeah, I don't think that the old school mentality can kind of come around to the idea that authors can generate their own buzz, and the ones who do it do it effectively actually have more pull than a traditionally published author a lot of the times. You
Yeah.
know, there's something to be said about a guy who can raise $37,000 by himself,
Totally
instead
by
of
myself.
right. Well, instead of
Well,
an agent who's going to take a cut of everything that you do. And, the
well, yeah,
publishing.
and even when you hear about people getting these six-figure deals, just to make numbers easy, if you get $100,000 advance for your traditionally published book, um, that's going to be pieced out, right? That
Right.
$100,000 is going to be spread out over delivery of certain things and then publishing of 3 books. So it could be literally from the time you signed the contract 4 years later that you get your final payment for that. Plus, you're paying tax on that. You're paying your agent's fees, attorney's fees, whatever else percentages there are, um, and 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 you may never see any residuals off those books.
Right. You got to beat out the advance.
So that's going to be all you get. So you break that down, spread that 100 grand over 4 years. It's not enough to live on, especially unless you're single and live in a 1 bedroom apartment and not in a city, right?
Not a
Uh,
nice one.
yeah, you just can't live on that. Even though it sounds like it was a great deal, and it was a great deal. But more often deals are, 10, 15,000, 20,000 for 1 book. And then we'll see maybe if it does okay, if we want you to do a second and third book. And it's nice, it's very cool. Some people love that. Some people are not good at having to do everything for the whole business. They don't want to do a startup business. They're much more into showing up for the job, doing the job, and then being done for the day. And that's awesome too. Because some days I'm like, this is too much.
Yeah.
What the hell am I doing? But plus I'm still doing the day job stuff too.
Right. And you
So
got to come on podcasts like this to come promote something.
yeah, oh my God, that's the
What a
worst.
fucking snoozer.
Nah, this is the best part.
Well, it's the best part for me because let me tell you, the worst part is like trying to come up with a clever tweet because that is the worst.
I just don't. I just write something stupid, and
Well, you know what? It
yeah.
resonates because you got a ton of Twitter buzz.
But I have buddies who don't do any social media or very, very little. And they sell literally 10 times as many books as I do.
It's crazy, right? Because
So,
I
a
get
lot of
authors
the
on here all the time
yeah,
that are either way.
a lot of the biggest fantasy authors in the world by number of books sold are completely unknown to most readers.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, because of Kindle Unlimited and Amazon. It's all ebooks and KU reads that they get. And they're making, uh, anywhere from high five figures to mid six figures salary, a
It's
year.
crazy.
Yeah.
If you could get people behind you
Yeah.
and you keep putting out a quality product,
Yeah. And they never really did all that much promotion, but it catches and people love it. And it just keeps rolling and snowballing. It's amazing. It's amazing. Take a look. Have you seen Will White's new pre-order?
oh, he kills it, right?
Yeah, and he's one of those completely unknown to the greater, most G.R.R. Martin and Joe Abercrombie and Brandon Sanderson fans around the world aren't aware of someone called Will White or his Cradle series because you'll never see his books um, uh, uh, on the New York Times bestseller charts or reviewed by NPR um, or in a bookstore ever. You'll never see him anywhere. So a ton of people have no idea who he is, and yet he outsells most. Probably not Brandon Sanderson, but he or
Right. Well,
George
that's
Martin, but he outsells the vast majority of writers
and
of
he
fantasy
is
today, no matter how well known they are.
and he is just like he is just breaking out of that underground superstar like kind of
Yeah,
persona he has like
his name is starting to leak out now because
right
you just almost can't ignore it. And part of that is that the trad pubs are paying attention to ratings now because they have books on Amazon, so they're paying attention to the ranks, best-selling books. And when Will White with every single book breaks the top 100 or goes even higher, and it stays there for weeks, you can't not notice that,
it's a
right?
juggernaut, you got to pay attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of books, now you mentioned this before that
And
you've
he's
drawn.
also an amazing guy.
I've
Uh,
heard great things.
yeah, he's a really cool guy. We're going to get him on Wizards, Warriors, and Words before you get him on this one. Ha ha. I actually need to message him today.
Start
But
plugging away.
I met him, and I was like, I told him after talking to him for quite a while, we spent a few days with a group of authors. I said, "Well, I so wanted to hate you, but I just can't." He's a really nice, gracious, generous young guy.
That man, you're really buttering him up for. I hope he sees this before he sees your message. He'll be like, "Yeah, I'm in. This guy
Nah,
loves me."
nah, I've known Will for a couple of years now, so that's cool. Yeah,
So
no, I wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. He's just a really nice, really supportive guy. Some people aren't, but he really is.
I've, I was worried about this that we weren't going to get to any book questions. So I'm ready to start firing some away. Oh, I got one more based on that coffee cup. Now I remember this. Did you ever finish Slow Farts, a hilarious coloring book for adults with kids?
That's totally Fletcher. Totally Fletcher. I was never going to write that. That's Fletcher project, and he's going to have his daughter illustrate it.
All right. Well, I saw it on your Instagram, so I'm not sure where that's at.
That wasn't me. I'm telling you. There are a lot of people out there pretending to be me, and I always blame Fletcher and Hayes. And Jed
That's
Hearn. Jed Hearn is doing it now too.
sneaky bastard.
They are.
Let's talk a little bit about the books, because that's what you're here to talk about.
Okay.
My first question is: Dr. Williams a great doctor, or should she be arrested immediately?
I say, screw it. She's a great doctor. Now, of course, only people who've read the book and read the first book recently will have any memory at all of who she is, but I know who you're talking about.
That's worth going back for.
Yeah.
Does the White Watcher ever consider watching over nicer places to look at? Because the England, Ireland, Scotland area is cold.
I don't know. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. They're all pretty beautiful places. But no, that's the place. That's where that's what he has to watch. He doesn't give himself a choice.
Because I'd be watching the Caribbean. I'd be like, I guess he's coming back over there. I don't believe.
Well, in book 2, he gets to go quite a few other places.
Should Bodvar have spent less time on WebMD and more time working on staying alive?
Oh, Bodvar, yes. He probably yes, but he thinks he's pretty tough. So, and it doesn't help that he was kind of mesmerized by the leech. So I can't really blame him.
Speaking of can't blame him, this is where I'm talking about we get a little wild. How good was that hand job that Merlin was willing to die for it?
Well, one of the most famous lovers in all of history. So, and a master of seduction. So I would imagine it was probably pretty darn good.
Do you think he would have been in the afterlife? Like, totally worth it.
Probably, knowing Mirrodin, yeah, probably.
I mean, you're free for 1 second. You get this awesome hand job, and then that's it. You're dead.
I can't wait till people who haven't read this see this, and they're like, "What the fuck is this book?"
This is the best sales pitch I could possibly give you.
Awesome.
PP Fee. Are kids incredibly mean or incredibly funny?
Both. They could be both. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely incredibly mean, but kids are funny. They're funny as hell. Shit that comes out of their mouths. Yeah. Kids are brutal.
Do you think all the events of this book could have been avoided if Zeke wasn't such a baby and actually slept with Fee?
No.
It was inevitable.
Well, you don't stop. You don't stop a war of gods that easily. That was happening in the background, no matter what they did on that first date. So
I like to live in an alternate world where Zeke was able to get it up, and then everybody was like, "Yeah, the world ain't so bad."
Nope. No, it was gonna happen. It was gonna happen anyway.
Oh, I'm loving this. Is Peter the perfect embodiment of YOLO? I know he had questions on what YOLO is.
Yes, for most of his life, that was he was the perfect embodiment of that. Now it's easier, right, when when you live forever, right? When that once, it's easier when that once that you live is like 4 billion years, 4 billion years, right? So much easier when you're a god.
Yeah,
you only live once for 4 billion years, so
might as well fuck
do
some
what you
animals.
Yeah, that's right.
I loved the placing that bit of dialogue, and not 5 pages later he's having a threesome in the bar bathroom.
Well, he's based, that character doesn't do anything more outrageous than Zeus or Odin, or I can't remember the creator god who came down and mated with a female bear to create the Korean peoples.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
In their in their creation mythology, or any number, South American, crazy ass South American and North, Mesoamerican, Central American mythologies. He doesn't do anything wackier than has already been laid out in mythologies from all around the world. So, the
Right.
joke is, Zeus and Odin, neither one of them could keep it in their pants, and they'd do anything, right? So there's nothing that Peter does in this book that they didn't do. So it's only actually as twisted or far-fetched as it seems, it is actually in line with the mythologies of the world.
I was thinking that as well, that Peter fucking animals is kind of mild compared to some of Zeus's exploits.
Well, yeah. Now Zeus could change forms too, so he would change like Peter does. Peter. It's not like Peter is a dude who's going out and raping animals. That's not the case at all.
No, it's consensual. That was made clear.
And he's not. He's also not a dude.
Right.
He's a being that's entirely not human, that can and does take the form of other animals throughout history, and he's only recently been in the shape of a man. So and that's in line with creation mythologies from a lot of areas of the world, that people are descended from a certain kind of animal, that got together with a god. That's just a given in many mythologies and even some religions of the world. But older religions, the fine line between legend and myth and religion is a very thin line, right? If there is even a line, depending on who you talk to. So it's not just perverse for the sake of being perverse. It's a retelling, and it's a story about storytelling, right? And how storytelling works, and a retelling of mythologies combined, in this kind of universal field theory of myth.
And it's also wildly entertaining.
Thanks.
Was the most impressive thing Peter does in the book remembering the 63 passwords to get into his bank account?
Is that the actual number? I don't even remember that. You've done some serious research.
I wrote it down somewhere. Let's see if I got it. I believe it's 63.
I totally believe you. But yeah, of course he remembers them. He has a perfect memory. He remembers everything from his entire lifetime, which of course you would expect from a being of his nature.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, here's the specifics. It's 36 questions, each randomly chosen from a pool of 100 that you yourself have created and entered answers for. There's 13 passcodes of 13 characters each.
Yeah, and he just whips them out. Done.
How come I can't remember my Facebook password? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the meanest thing that happens in this book is that they make Zeke miss his conference?
Yes, that's the meanest thing that happens. Nothing else mean happens to anyone in this book. Right? In these books, nothing in the whole series.
I thought that was the meanest, because
that was the meanest thing. Yeah, Zeke had to miss his conference where he was trying to get a scholarship.
Because that didn't just kill. I'd rather die in the present than have my dreams killed in the future. Except The one good thing is it permanently gives him an excuse if he flames out later in life. Like
Right.
it would have all been great if I just made that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Of course, by a certain point, he becomes more qualified than anyone and possibly could be in the entire world for that scholarship, right?
I think you're up there on number 2. I mean, you wrote the thing.
Yeah, I made it all up and I don't remember any of it.
You have a PhD already, so maybe let's not try to pile it on. You don't want to be an overachiever, you know, like a Hollywood
Right. Yeah,
actor,
yeah.
a Hollywood actor, tenure track professor with a PhD, and then an award-winning author.
I don't
Don't
even
want to
know
end.
who I don't even know who all those people are anymore.
You're just the guy in a
Not
Nike
only
hat
are
on a
there all
shit
these
podcast.
not only are there all these other me's, there are all these me's too. I just can't keep track.
I want to say, out of your whole career, the most impressive thing you ever did was trade a horse for a car.
I did do that, and that is a story that that people are always amazed by, especially people in California. They love that. It's true. It's true what they say. I spent a lot of time in New York and in LA, and unless people there are from the Midwest, and you don't find all that many you find them in New York, but you find a lot more in LA. But for the most part, there's LA, Chicago, New York, and the rest of it is just what they call the Great Flyover. They don't give a shit about the middle of the country. They absolutely do not care.
Right.
And have no interest in seeing it. And I'm not saying that true of everyone, but it is true of a whole lot of people on the coasts.
At this point, you might be the only person.
The story
I care
that
about.
I traded traded a 7/8 Arabian horse to somebody for a 76 Beetle, Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah, when I was 16. It was awesome. Straight up trade. It's a great car. I ended up wrapping it around a telephone pole, but it was I love that car.
In hindsight, it's better than wrapping a horse around a telephone pole.
Oh yeah, much better than wrapping a horse around a telephone pole.
How many plans is too many plans? Do you think Clearon should have focused more on one of his plans going correctly instead of 87 different ones all going poorly?
Well, you can't blame him. He's used to, pulling the strings of a lot of things. But, times have changed. It gets a little tougher. But yeah, he gets thwarted a lot. Things just don't go well for him for for the most part throughout the book. But he kind of deserves it. So I don't feel too bad about that.
I do. The guy spent so much time planning this shit. There's nothing worse than spending thousands of years planning something and just having to go, oh, well, thwarted that one, on to plan EFGHIJK.
Yeah, but he's not really the boss. So
dun, dun, dun.
the boss's plans go pretty well.
Does Fiona have any fingernails left?
No.
Okay.
She never had many. She never had many. And she gets a good handle on that biting the fingernails thing. But yeah, she's no. And then once she starts training to be a Valkyrie, you can't have fingernails.
That's a good point.
You're just gonna wear them off, even if you've got firstborn fingernails, you're gonna wear them off.
Who eats more fingers, her or Dimmy?
Definitely Dimmy. Yeah. Definitely, yeah. Dimmy is, yeah. He's a finger eater for sure.
I haven't read the other 2 books yet because I'm hoping that this went well enough to one day get you back. We don't have to say anything about that right now.
Okay.
Does Zeke mentions Peter Pan and Tinkerbell giving out cookies? Do they make an appearance?
Maybe. Since you haven't read them, that's all I'm going to tell you.
As one future Amazon reviewer puts it, no Peter Pan or Tinkerbell was promised in book 1.
So I've already spoiled a couple of little things maybe for the second 2 books for you, since you haven't read them, the next 2 books, but I'm considering them to be more like teasers than spoilers.
I'm considering that the one person I cared about in the Midwest, I no longer do because he spoiled his own books for me. I'd like to pitch some novella ideas.
Okay.
These are winners. I know I'm sure you're used to the world of pitches, so I've got some good ones for you.
Okay. I'm ready.
Mal the Big Murderous Dog. It's a spin-off of Clifford the Big Red Dog, except the dog is Mal, and she goes on adventures, kind of in a children's story, except she eats people.
Yeah, well, he's done that. He's done a lot of that. So I that's not very far-fetched at all.
All right, that was a winner. I've got another good one.
Here's a spoiler for you. In book 2, he's dreaming, and you know how dogs, they lie on their backs and they twitch while they're dreaming. and Edgar is thinking that he's probably dreaming about chasing rabbits or Persians. since he marched with Alexander, right?
Both equally hard to catch.
Yeah.
Okay, then my second one, since that's already a winner, but it's always good to come with more than one victory pitch. Uncovering ancient secrets. So you mentioned that reality TV is going to be the death of all these secrets. So
yep,
the host actually discovers all these ancient secrets, and it's just so realistic and unbelievable that people don't believe it.
I play with, I won't say anymore, but I play with that a little bit in the next couple books.
God, it's like we're one mind over here.
Wait a minute. Are you me?
I don't want to get in on
too.
I don't want to get in on the Doppels. You look like well, we do have the same hair. So
yeah, that's true.
Argus spends hundreds of years building weapons. How come I can't spend 5 minutes coming up with the outline for this podcast?
Right. For one weapon, right? Yeah. It can take hundreds of years. Yeah, well, it's because you live, like, for his lifetime, you would be alive for maybe like 1 second.
Tanuki mentions that humans can project air of confidence or sexuality or, a whole bunch of other things. My question to you is how?
Well, what the whole thing is that even if they don't feel that way, right? Humans can project that. So,
yeah, no, I get that. So how?
Yeah, you want to know, right? I don't know. I certainly can't. So, but I know that there are other people that can.
Well, I was kind of
if Tanuki says it, it's got to be true, right?
So that's my third novella idea that came up organically in this podcast, a Tanuki self-help book, How to Be a Human.
Perfect. Don't call each other bad names.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Shout out to my mom for not doing that. So one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of break the traditional mold of what people expect fantasy to be. So, okay. Kind of not the like neck beard Dungeons and Dragons in your mom's basement, misogynistic, the guy has to save the princess and is going to slay 1,000,000 dragons unrealistically using a bunch of magic.
And then, of course, he'll be able to bed the princess, right?
Oh, yeah. If he's not bedding her, then why are we even reading this?
Yeah.
So one of my goals is to highlight that fantasy has gone way beyond that and that it has a unique and interesting kind of global appeal that people are starting to come to realize. So what about your book series kind of breaks that traditional mold?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. I tried to do quite a few things that were a little bit different. And, to be honest, a lot of it that has been pointed out was not something I did on purpose. Now, I've only had one person challenge me that I had the creative God be male as opposed to female. But anybody who's read the books, and then if you continue reading on, um, you find that that he was pretty terrible father overall
Yeah, he
to just
sucked.
about to just about everyone, and has been a god awful monster of a person, if you could call him a person at times. But he's also capable of enormous love and doing incredible things. But the the characters who really kind of steal the story and have the true power all the way through are his daughters, and they're the most powerful. They everybody defers to them. um the two biggest bad guys, actually the three biggest bad guys, are all males. um I try to subvert. I didn't really try to subvert some things, but that's how I feel about kind of the world and this story, right? That appearances aren't always what you think they are, and you get out of the world what you put into it. And people are going to project their own uh, ideas, preconceived notions, ideologies, neuroses, um, on books, whether that stuff exists in there or not. And that can be to say that it's wonderful and I love it, or to say that it's terrible, it's like this or it's like that. It doesn't meet up to these modern expectations. I don't run into much of that in this with these books of the latter. And I'm very, very careful to one thing that I was very careful with was an attempt to have a variety of mythologies, because I love all mythology from everywhere. I don't have um, any one that I privilege as more important. If it looks like that in the book, it's just simply because the vast majority of readers will be more familiar with these certain mythologies than these certain mythologies, right? So you do have to try to, in some way, make things exciting for people who know almost nothing about mythology, as well as people who know a shitload about mythology. And people who know almost nothing about mythology aren't going to connect if a lot of the if everything is centered on a mythology that no one who are the core majority of readers of fantasy in the world and buyers, right, of fantasy in the world don't know and can't connect with. So that's that's the only reason it might seem that way in the book, that there might be a lot more of Greek or Norse or Celtic than there are of other mythologies of the world. But if you read it, you'll find that a lot of the most powerful and important characters have nothing to do with mythologies of the West. Um, and that's kind of the way I wanted it to be. And there are some things that could have been done differently, but to be honest, you cannot please everybody. And the worst thing an author can do is to try to write a book that absolutely will not offend anyone under any possible circumstances, and will have things that please absolutely everybody. It's impossible. Look at
I,
Goodreads reviews of, you know, Pulitzer Prize winning, most best selling, most famous books of all time that have sold hundreds and hundreds of millions of copies of books, and tell me you can't find some reviews that just shred it, because
oh
they
no, I
do.
could find
There's
them on
so
the first page.
Yeah, there's somebody who will shred any book. There's nothing you can do to please everybody. So You know, the number one most important thing is to write the book that you want to write in the way that you want to write it. Tell the story in the way you want to write it. Tell it. And but I do agree and believe that you should try not to offend in a way that you wouldn't want to offend, right? Have you ever how many people have never said something in conversation and realized later, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. That might have, I forgot about this part of this person's past or that or whatever. I hope that they weren't offended by that, or I hope that didn't make them mad. I mean, if there's anyone who can say they've never done that, I'm telling you, they're either lying or they've never spoken to anyone in their entire life. So, as an author, you don't want to go, oh shit, I really, really wish I wouldn't have said that or done that this way because I really didn't think that I might be offending someone in a way I never would have wanted to. Now, if you want to offend people in a particular way in your book or to shock them or to piss them off, go ahead and do it. I mean, anybody who says this shouldn't be in books, that shouldn't be in books, this must be in books. We were talking about George Orwell, Fahrenheit 451, right? And nobody can say you're not because you are. I mean, you're talking about control. Um, and and the minute we really allow that kind of thing, we're in trouble. I mean, if there's going to be a certain elite that controls what people can and cannot see down to the minutest level, I mean, yes, there are certain things we absolutely cannot tolerate, right? Child pornography, right?
Right.
Those anyone can agree on. But if you really start digging down deep and just trying to control and place, it must have this and this and this and this, and must not have this or this or this or this or this or this or this. And a lot of people, you've read reviews. Oh, there's so much cursing in this book. I hated it, right? Next person could say, this book is so milquetoast. There's no sex, there's no cursing. I hated it. It's just like people like what people like. I don't know. Yeah, it's just I just say write what you want to write. But again, be very careful not to offend in a way that you really wouldn't want to as a person, right? So just be careful of that stuff. So the idea of a sensitivity reader, if you want to, I have no problem with things like that because they may catch things that you're like, well, that's okay. I'm going to leave that in there. But they may catch things that you're like, just like you might have said something in a conversation with a group and later you go, oh shit, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Well, they catch that and they save you from having, blurted out something dumb in public, only in the form of before you release your book. So, there's nothing wrong with that.
If you couldn't tell Dirk was a teacher before, you definitely could after that answer. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And I think you captured a lot of it. What my biggest takeaway is you literally can go back to any episode of this show and I will have offended you somehow, I'm sure.
Yeah.
As a person.
So I use the F word and there are a whole lot of purple. There are a whole lot of purple people. There are a whole lot of people who are simply offended by cursing at all and saying it's unnecessary and shouldn't be used. And in certain cases it is, but under certain circumstances, I don't give a shit. Like I wouldn't use that word when I'm teaching in the classroom.
Right.
There are certain situations when things are okay and when things are not. You can't, I mean, the only way that no one could ever offend or piss off anyone would be to never speak or never write anything. That's just a fact. It's just a reality of life.
And everybody bows down now to the Twitter and Reddit mob. And I think that's not, I don't know how that's going to bode in the future. I feel like that could stymie creativity in a lot of ways.
And it's a slippery slope, but it's also a sticky subject in a way that a lot, there are a lot of things that are true and they're right. But
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that.
but so it's not so much the ideas, it's how things are gone about, right? It's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's not what law you pass, it's how it's enforced, how it's interpreted in the courts, these kinds of things. So these are just things that we're going to have to negotiate as we go forward.
Yeah, and if you're really gonna be offended by a doctor fucking a patient because he smells good, then I think we're in trouble over here.
I mean, in her defense,
he smelled good.
He is a god.
I don't know, Dirk. If you smelled the right way, I would. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come on the show. Where can people find you? Though I think we've covered most of it. Let's lay it out in a list.
Okay, thanks for having me. I'm on Twitter at Undirk, Instagram at Undirk, Facebook at just Dirk Ashton, DyrkAshton. And I also have a business page, book business page, Paternus Books Media on Facebook.
Fantastically done site, by the way.
Oh, and yeah, my website is paternusbooks.com is all it is. Thanks. I'm glad you like it because I neglect the hell out of it. I just have so little time because I do that all myself. I had a guy initially set it up for me in early 2016 before my first book came out, and it's been just me ever since. So it's kind of a mess.
I actually had something on that. In 2016, you wrote a blog called Blog Coming Soon. And
yeah. And I never did continue that blog.
You did though, kind of.
I don't know. I rarely ever blog. It became one of those things. You learn early on that, some people do only Twitter. Some people do only Facebook. Some people spend more time on things than one thing than other things. Some people spend all their time on Reddit and very little on social media, Reddit fantasy. But you just have to pick your battles, right? Some people spend a lot of time on their blogs and on their newsletters, regular newsletters. And I just had to pick my battles, and you pick those by what seems to work the best and weighing that with what you enjoy and what you just fucking hate doing. And putting together newsletters takes me forever. But that's okay. Blogs, no way. I mean, the idea that, I have so little time to write anyway. The idea of having to say every 2 weeks or once a month, having to sit and come up with something to write about in a blog, fuck that. Some people are really good at that stuff. One thing, I don't multitask well. You would think I have to because I have to do so many things at the same, but I don't do any of them at the same time. I am not good at that. And if I look at a day of things that have to be done and it's 25 things, I just blank and I just do a couple of them. If I have 5 things I have to do, I can get through all those. But if I list way too many things in a day or a week to do, I'm just like, fuck it, I'm not doing, a bunch of it. And then I just never do it again. And the blogging was one of those things. It's like, oh, it's time to do a blog again. Time to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours or 2 days, coming up with something and writing something and posting it. It's like, no, it's not happening. I'm sorry.
It's one of my running jokes on this show that every time an author's first book starts to build traction, their blog immediately dies. So you perfectly fit into that mold.
I could not keep up.
So everybody, go buy the trilogy, and it's too late to back the Kickstarter, but I'm sure you'll have another one coming, and everybody go support. And for all you haters out there, I'm going to be sending the 40 plus blurbs at the end of the book at anybody who writes a negative comment on Dirk's pages. So there you got to deal with that. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
I think I say it in the interview, but I just want to reiterate. Dirk is one of those people who's literally lived three people's dreams. Some people would dream of being like a college professor. He did that and got tenure. Some people dream of being an actor. He's done that and decided to just yeet out of there. And some people dream of being an award-winning fantasy author. Well, he's done that as well. So if you ever wanted to feel bad about yourself, like Khloe Kardashian when she looked at those unedited photos of herself and decided to try to scrub them from the internet, Dirk is one of those people who really helps you feel like a piece of shit. So, until I achieve my dream of interviewing Brandon Sanderson and asking him what his favorite version of his nickname is, I will feel like a piece of shit. Let's do books on the horizon because I think I've talked enough about this whole thing. Let me get them right this time. That would be nice. Next week is going to be Songs of Insurrection by USA Today best-selling author J.C. Kong, who is hopefully my new best friend. Then we've got Legacy of the Brightwash by future all-star Crystal Matar. And when I say that one is out of control wild, that interview is wild. I mean, she was fucking incredible. And then after that, I'm hoping to do Aching God by Mike Schell, which is the shortest author name I've ever heard. And it's right to the fucking point. So, until next week, everybody keep on reading, because that's the whole point of this. And I'll see you on the next stop. Peace!